Hi guys, and welcome to episode number 5 of the Elliot Answers show. Hi guys, thanks for watching today. My name is Elliot Forbes. I'm a male grooming specialist based in northeast London. This channel is dedicated to hair, beard and grooming tips for the modern man. So if that's something you're interested in, you might want to consider subscribing. So the Elliot Answers show is all about trying to find out problems that guys are having with their hair, whether it's not being able to style it the way they want to, not having the product that they want, trying to work out what haircut that they should be having, and things like that, all to do with hair, anything that could do with beard and anything to do with men's grooming as well. So if there's any questions that you have or that you want answering, feel free just to drop me a message down below and we'll get to that in one of the future episodes. So the first question that we're going to be talking about today is sharp lines versus soft lines. Now this is something that changes from person to person. There's a lot of guys that want really sharp lines on the sort of the hairline, a lot of them that want really soft hairlines, and it's down to personal preference with that. For myself, the type of clientele that I have, I always tend to lean towards more of a softer line, something that grows out a little bit softer. You don't then have anything really pressed in, nothing too sharp. When you have a real sharp line, what you then tend to find is actually that it grows out quite quickly, because what you'll see, there's a big difference between the hair where it's then sharp and then the hair that's underneath it. So whether that, if it was here at the back, if you've got that sharp line there, then it goes quickly from the dark into the grubbiness, and it just looks a bit dirty. If you have more of a softer line at the start, then it's already blending out. So you've got that blending in through there, and it's once the hair that grows in through this area, it's already then blended into it. So actually it gives that bit more longevity to the haircut. If you have a stronger line, or if you have a sharper line, to make it as sharp as possible, you need to leave more density and more hair in that area. So actually, yeah, to have it stronger, there's got to be more hair there, which means actually it feels like it grows out quicker as well. Because if you've got, say, to have a sharp lining through that back area, I've got to have more hair than if it was tapered out. So that also then means it grows out quicker. It feels like you need to have your haircut a little bit more often, especially if you're then, say, going to have your hairline at the front shaped up and sharpened up. If you have it sharp around there, then as soon as you start seeing a little bit more growth, or as soon as you start seeing some growth, you're like, fuck, well, I need to razor that off again. I need to trim it, and you need to do it yourself. So there's a lot more maintenance when you have sharp lines as well. So if you were to have a sharp line around the front, it's going to look very grubby very quickly. So yeah, you're going to need to use your own razor at home to be trimming that. It's like with the guys when they've had some of them have had their widow's peak shaved off, and when they've had that done, it grows back and you end up having a little tuft. So actually you have to maintain that and shave it all the time. So I tend to lean towards more soft lines, something that grows out, yeah, very softly, something it's you don't really notice it. It blends out very easily. It's nice, it's elegant. Now there is a place for sharp lines, but for myself, it's not really what I'm seeing with my client base at the moment. So the second topic today is hair transplants. Now this is a big thing recently. We're seeing a lot of people going over to Turkey, over to Poland, wherever it is they're going to get these hairlines and to get these hair transplants. And it's a big problem for a lot of guys. It's a massive psychological factor they have. A lot of guys that I talk to, they get depressed about it. They're losing their hair. They don't know what to do about it. They're looking for all these alternate options. And a hair transplant, now that these options of going to Turkey, going to Poland, or wherever it is they're going are available, obviously these prices are cheaper than what it is in the UK. So they're going over to these places, and some of them are great, some of them are iffy, to say the best. And I've been looking at a few photos on Instagram recently about this, because I've had a lot of clients of mine asking me about, should I do it, where should I go? And it's not something I'm too clued up on, to be honest. I don't really know where you should go. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to recommend any places, but there's a lot of places that you see now on Instagram where they're doing it, and it just doesn't look natural. You've got hairs, they're sort of taking them out of wherever it is they're taking them out of the back, and they're putting them into the hairline at the front or in through the back. When they're doing it through the hairline, often it looks very fake, and you can if they're not like being very thoughtful and mindful of where they're placing each of these individual hairs, you find that it could sort of jump out. I actually saw a photo yesterday on Instagram where actually they'd sort of just put one. It was like right at the front of the head, and it was just then basically spiking out. And now, obviously, that's completely negligent. But how do you know that these people? How do you know which one of these to pick? So it's a real tricky subject. I would say there's been a few of my clients that have been over to places and had, say, more this area transplanted, and actually that's been great. They've really enjoyed that. But also one of them then had, I think they also then after a few months ended up having a cyst on top of their head and then they went to the doctors, got it looked at. I think the doctor then sort of had to cut them open, and what they found in there, that it was actually sort of 6 or 7 hair follicles in this place. So they'd been taken out of the back of the head and then put into this one place, and it just sort of congregated in there and got infected. So it is a tricky decision to know where to go to get these places to get your hair transplant done. I think it is a great option if you pick the right place, because I know for a fact that when guys have had it done and it's been successful, their confidence has gone sky high and they've absolutely loved it. But it is, trying to find the right places for it. So you've got to do a lot of research. I mean, I would instinctively say try and find somewhere in the UK, because I would imagine there's higher regulations. But also I don't know that. And also you can just as easily get conned in the UK as well, I guess, can't you? Yeah. So I guess it's more doing your research, finding the right places for it, and trying to make an informed decision. I guess the best thing to do is go on recommendations. People that have actually had it done before, and listening to them really is what I would say. And the next question is brush versus a comb. Okay, well, if we're talking about styling the hair, whether you would use a brush or a comb, then really that comes down to whether you want more of a looser look or whether you want more of a tight, defined look. So if you wanted more of a sculpted, more defined look, you would go for more of a comb, because obviously with a comb, that gets a lot more tension. Obviously each individual tooth, each individual tooth is very close to each other. So obviously when you're doing that, you get some really good tension. So you can really separate that hair so it then sits in the position that you want it to. Obviously then if you're doing a parting, it's much easier to be able to find the parting if you're using a comb. If you're going to use a brush to find your parting, obviously it's going to be a little bit rougher. So then obviously if you want it to be stricter, use the brush, use the comb. If you want it to be a bit looser and not quite as perfect, then use the brush. Obviously when you're using a comb, you can then sit it into the place exactly the way it wants to. If you're using the brush, just trying to style your hair, obviously there's a few different types of brushes. If you wanted to sort of brush the hair into the place, I would use more of a vent brush, something that is quite loose, something that's not really going to grab too much tension on it. That can then brush it into the way that it wants to. You can smooth it out. Say if you then wanted to get more of a defined look with the blow dry, then actually maybe using something more like a 9-row brush. That's going to be able to grab the hair a lot tighter, so you can smooth the hair out. You might have a bit of a kink, and you might want to smooth it out. So actually, in that scenario, you'd use more of a 9-row brush. You can really work that from side to side, or more of a paddle brush that can push it over there. It really grabs the hair and then pushes it side to side. So if you wanted to have more of a real strong quiff, then you could really get a round brush and really trying to work that with a bit of a quiff in there, a bit of a wave, a bit of more of a volume in through that front area. Now then, if you were using a brush versus a comb with the beard, obviously if you're trying to pick the hairs out, then using the comb is better, because it's underneath where it then really gets up tight in through there. The comb can get in there and really grab them all out and then comb them down so they sit in the correct place. That's obviously what you want to do if you're trimming your beard. Obviously you want to make sure you comb them all out first, so that you can get them and cut them off, because the last thing you really want is lots of long hairs and lots of bushiness underneath your chin. And when you're blow drying your beard, obviously the same thing goes again with that. If you're going to use a comb versus using a brush, if you use a comb, you're going to be able to get more tension on it. So because obviously the teeth are tighter, you can be able to pull that down, you can get it smoother. Obviously, if you use a brush, or if you use, say, more of the vest brush again, or more of the vent brush again, obviously you can get that. Obviously, it's going to sit smooth, but if it doesn't quite grab it as tight, doesn't get the same amount of tension on it. Obviously, then when deciding whether if you're going to use a comb or use a brush, you need to decide whether you want more of a defined look, more of a wet look sat into place, or whether you want more of a looser look. Obviously, if you want more of the stricter, more defined look, then you use the comb. If you're going to use a looser look, then you would use the brush. And realistically, you might not even need the brush. If you want a looser look, you might be able to just use it with your hands. That could work actually really quite nicely, just working the blow dryer in and being able to pull the texture apart with your fingers, as opposed to using a brush. That gives it much more of a natural effect and much more of a real texture in through there. If you use a brush, it can still sit a little bit too smooth and a little bit too sort of done. If you want more of a textured, lived-in look, then actually using your fingers is a great way of being able to style the hair as well. So you don't always have to, if you're blow drying your hair, you don't always have to use a brush or a comb. So obviously that's something to be mindful of. At the moment, the trends are leaning towards a little bit more broken, textured looks as opposed to set in place looks. So I would probably lean towards using more fingers. I don't think I've used a brush on my hair for a long time. When I'm blow drying my hair, I would still blow dry it even though it's short, because I would still put a pre-styler in there. So I would always then just put that into the first, blow dry it, and then I would, with my fingers, work that into the root to try and get some volume in through there. So it was working with more of a natural texture, trying to enhance the natural texture of it. So working my fingers into the root, trying to buckle the root slightly at the bottom so that can give it that texture, that broken up, just pinching the hair slightly, that then gives it a bit more separation as well with it. And the next term is men's facial hair. So obviously that's a massive topic, isn't it, really, in terms of the different types of beards that you can have. I think the key for this one is, although beards are in trend at the moment, I would still say try and really work out what you are and not just going with the trend of having facial hair at the moment. There's a few guys that I cut their hair and they're clean shaven, and they look great being clean shaven. Like, I can't picture them with a beard. I just don't think it would work. They've got the amount of facial hair that you would need, or the amount of density to be able to grow facial hair, to grow a beard. But actually the way that their face sits and the way that it works with the haircut they've got, actually being cleanly shaven works really well. Like, it's still very cool to have a clean shave if it works with the way that you dress and the way that your haircut is. And obviously the big beards and the really long ones that are down to here, they're sort of not as prominent and not as in fashion at the moment as they were probably 5 or 6 years or so ago. But beards still very much are a trend, and very much, in my opinion, going to be around for quite a long time actually, because now a lot of the guys, barbers, men or women, know how to actually cut the beards. So they can actually be looked after a lot better. So actually the professionals in the banking world and the lawyers, they've got more scope to be able to have a beard at work, because actually they can be tidied up and maintained a lot better than in previous years. It would always be considered bad to be having a beard in the business world, but now obviously they can be tidied up so much better that actually it makes sense for it to stick around. It's going to be around for quite a while, I would say. In terms of what I've got, I quite like this. I just run a 2 over it and then fade it down the sides. So it's still more of a facial hair. It still, for me, gives a little bit more of a jawline. So I didn't really realise until a few years ago that I just have no jawline, and it was when a few photos of me were taken from the side, and basically my face just sits straight down and I just don't have no chin. So it's, for me, when I have a bit more of a beard, a bit more of a stubble like this, even though I don't have a long beard, I can still leave weight in the correct areas to give the illusion of a stronger chin and a stronger jawline. By fading up from the bottom, I still would leave some weight on this line, so actually it can strengthen that, and that's key. So you've got to work with the right shape for the face to be able to enhance the features. I know when I tried to grow my beard, I think I had it down to about here at one point, but it just looked super straggly. I didn't have the density or the depth or the strength of the hair really to be able to grow it that long. And it's being able to assess what your hair on your face actually does, not just picking a photo and thinking, oh yeah, I like that beard, I'm going to try and emulate that beard, which is what a few guys do. I think you've got to try and work with your beard, and actually you can have it longer and shorter, but still working with your beard as opposed to trying to work off and trying to emulate a certain type of beard. So when I had mine long, actually this area sits really quite weak. There's nothing really in through there. So all of a sudden it looked quite Amish on me, to be honest, because this is quite fine. So you got that a bit more darker in through there, and it was also just light dark, and you could still see through it as well. So it just looked ridiculous actually. Looking back at the photos now, it looked almost quite homeless, even though it would have been trimmed and maintained every week. So it was working with your beard and working with the amount of hair that you've got on your face is great. For me now, a tip for the beard is when you're trimming the beard, what you want to make sure that actually is, even when you're fading it, the principle still stays the same. When you're looking from the side, whatever the length of the beard is, it wants to be coming back on a straight line. So to be able to enhance my chin and give it a bit more of illusion as though I do have a chin, it goes straight back from here, and that's where the weight is kept and the weight is left. So actually you can see how it sits a little bit darker in through here, and then keep the density and the depth in through there. You want to get rid of all of the bulk that's sat underneath there, because obviously if you have no chin, that's all of a sudden going to drop it down, because when you look from the side, if you've kept all that weight, a lot more weight in through there, it's then just going to drop straight down. It gives the illusion of a double chin, which is obviously not what a lot of guys want to have. Common problems with the beard as well is that it sits really heavy underneath here, so you need to be sort of smoothing that down. And the problem is that actually you get a lot more width in through here, so actually then by smoothing down here, what you can do with that is pull all these hairs back to the natural line and then trim them off. When you comb that back down, that reduces a lot more of the weight. So that's a way of trimming the beard in through there, maintaining it. Moustache, depending on whether you want a full moustache or whether you want it to sit just in keeping with the rest of the beard, what you can do is just comb all those hairs down to the lip line and just trim them up over just to the lip line, not going too far into it. If the hairs spike out, then you can just nip them off very gently. I would lean against really trying to go hardcore with that, because there's been a few times where I've seen mistakes go on with it and there's chunks taken out of through there. And in terms of trends and what I see going forward with the beards and facial hair is actually, I think, having a bit more of a moustache, maybe not like a full-on super just thick moustache and then cleanly shaved. I'm not sure that 2019 or 2020 is quite ready for that at the moment, but I would say a bit more of a moustache, so maybe down to even sort of like the length of stubble that I've got, which is a number 2 on the clippers, which is 6mm. So taking that down to like a 2 through there and then leaving this heavier through the moustache. Maybe you can even go a little bit shorter than this, so it's a bit more of a stubble, but then having a bit more of a moustache, taking that down to just to the lip line, but still maintaining a bit more density and darkness in through there. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a full moustache or full handlebars or being able to twizzle it around, but a bit dark through the moustache is definitely something I see being a bit more of a trend. It's been like that for the last year or so, but I can see it getting more and more so with that. There's a couple more of my trendier clients that have started to do that, and it looks great. And I think the stigma of sort of people being in the 80s and looking silly with it, I think that's definitely gone. I think it's turned that circle, and definitely much more cooler people are wearing it as well. So inevitably, if the cooler people are wearing it, eventually it will get more mainstream. So I think that's where it's going to go over the next year or so. Now the next question is how to straighten men's hair. Now there's a couple of options in terms of the way that you'd style it yourself at home. There's obviously a straightener using heat, obviously you've been able to use like a straightening iron, or then there's using a hairdryer and a brush. Now for myself, I would always lean towards more a brush and a hairdryer, because there's less chance of damaging it. Less chance of damaging your hair, really. It's a bit easier. You don't need to have as much precision, as much sort of finesse as you need to. And it doesn't look as done, or it doesn't have to look as done as using a straightening iron. If you're using the brush and the hairdryer, you can obviously, if you've got a bit more of a wave, as I've touched on previously, you can work it side to side to straighten it out. You can use the round brush to sort of smooth the kink out of it, to get a bit more of a wave if you need it to. In terms then of the straightener, if you do that, obviously it works very straight. You've got that and it sits until you wet it, you've got that sitting very straight. And it looks, when I look at it, it looks a little bit fake. And unless you're very skilled at using the straighteners, it can look very sort of, straight and very much rigid to that point, and a bit more shine on it. And it's, for me, I think when you look back into sort of 2008, 2009, a lot of people would have been straightening their hair. I know I did it. I always used to straighten through the back here to be able to then sit that so it came out, the fringe would be straightened, so it just sat straight across. And I would lean against straightening the hair, to be honest. The tools that they have now are great, and they're some really good things that I was given a pair of GHDs from GHD, funnily enough, with my name engraved on them, so fancy pants, I know. But using it on a guy's hair in 2019, I'm not sure it's necessarily the look that's going around too much at the moment. Obviously, if you've got longer hair and you want it straight, then you can do, but also I feel like that can also look a little bit effeminate. Not that there's anything wrong with looking feminine, but it's gonna lean towards that more of a look. And obviously with 2019, it's a bit more of a textured look. It's a bit more broken up. So actually having it super straight like that is not probably the biggest on-trend look at the moment. You've got to be very careful of damaging your hair. There was one of my clients a few months back. Now he hasn't got massively like wavy hair, but he wanted to straighten his hair at the front a little bit, and he straightened it so much that actually just in one time, that actually even after wetting it, it still sat very straight. He only did the front, left all the behind, left all the back. So this, for then the next couple of months, even up to now, this sat really still textured, but at the front was a different texture to actually what you had through here. So it almost, I don't know whether he'd like sealed the cuticle where he'd really burnt it or what had actually happened to it, but it was a very much difference between the two of them. And because it was then a different texture, it almost sat floppy, because it was it was straight, but then it would just come down. It didn't have that, almost like the body, it'd almost been like squashed and pressed flat, as opposed to, if you picture it, obviously thinking it's round. So it would almost change the hair. So I would always lean towards more the hairdryer if you want to straighten the hair a little bit more with it. The next option with that would be obviously to get an actual straightening treatment. If your hair is really curly and you want to sort of have that as more as a permanent thing. Now these can be quite expensive, but they do last obviously for quite a decent amount of time. I was cutting someone's hair last Friday who'd had a treatment done, and his hair, we were cutting the back and sides. We weren't, well, we did cut the top, but we weren't necessarily taking it down too much. And basically he'd had the top and through the crown area that had been chemically straightened, relaxed. It'd been, so it sat really nice and smooth. But you could see his natural texture through the sides, and it was really curly, really wavy. And we took that down and then blended that into it. And that can work great. Obviously, you've got to be mindful of keeping on top of the back and the sides then, because the two different textures are very different. So it almost looks like two haircuts. But if you can keep on top of that, it looks great. And if the curls and the waves are too much for you and you want the straight, that can be really something to look into. I think he'd had a keratin straightening. And I think he said he paid £150 for it, which I guess if that lasts for 3 months or so, it's not really that bad of an option. So that's something to look into as well. Yeah, like I think that worked really well for him. He was very, very precious about the way we were cutting it. He was sort of very mindful of not to take it too short, because obviously then that jumps up and doesn't sit in the way, gets the curl back in. So he wanted to keep it long as well, to be able to sit it back with the straightness. Obviously, needs to be cut by the right person and to create the right shape with it as well, which I took more off than he wanted, but then actually he realised by having it cut into that shape, it worked a lot better for the longevity of it. So, well, there we go, another 5 questions answered today. Head on over to my channel where there is plenty more. Elliot Answers show. There's also the Elliot Asks show, where I'm interviewing industry experts. We get their insights into the men's hair world, their little tips, things to improve the hair, where they see hair trends going. So head on over to there. There's videos uploaded there weekly. There's little vlogs, little things about myself. You get to know myself a little bit better. If you have any questions for myself, head on over to my social media channels. They're all going to be linked on the side here and then down below. Twitter's probably the easiest one to send me a message and get a dialogue going. I'll answer any questions that you have and we'll start a little conversation. If you'd like to book an appointment with myself, head on over to my website. It's elliot-forbes.com. It's going to be linked down below as well. You can head on to there. That will give you a little bit more of a deeper insight into who I am, the type of haircuts that I do, the way that I would address a consultation, and the services that I provide. So head on over to there. There's an online booking system. Anyway, you can book online for me. Thanks for watching today. Much love, Elliot.